I'm back, baby. I read 6 books throughout August and I'm so happy about it because I read 1 book in July. So my reading is back on. Yes, my routine is back into a bit of a normal kind of stature or organization. I'm also listening to and reading books now during my early hour feeds with the baby, which helps significantly because that's just an extra few hours. So 6 books were read in August, and they're not all small books either. It's not like I read some, short books just to fill out the spaces. There is probably 1 or 2 books in here which took me like a day or a day and a half, as opposed to the other books which took me multiple days. There are some absolute bangers in here, some books that were overhyped, some books that I think you're going to be disappointed by how much I didn't like, some books that could end up being on my book of the year at the end of the year, and a book that I was surprised at how impressed I was by it. So if you're new here, click subscribe. If you're old here, click like. Let's get into the video and we'll see the 6 books that I read throughout August. So the first book I finished in August was The Ferryman by Justin Cronin. This is a science fiction book about a world, and I'm going to try and describe this in a way that doesn't butcher it because it's quite complicated, but also simple at the same time. You are brought into the world on a ship, you're taken off into the world on a ship. You are then given a couple of people that essentially adopt you or look after you, and you go about your life and you work there. Now, a lot of this feels quite vague, and maybe that's just because I didn't pick it up quite well, but essentially the idea behind it is that it's kind of sci-fi, but everything is kind of choreographed. Everything in this world is set out. There are jobs that are fairly normal, but it is also a very specific thing. For example, our main character is a ferryman. He is the director of this company. He is quite powerful, but he's not powerful enough that one day he is asked, as part of his job, to take his own father to be shipped off again the island. What happens during this event is essentially his father starts to go a bit crazy, and he has this big public episode that is really embarrassing for everybody involved, and the ferryman, our main character, ends up quite badly beating this professional worker or this kind of guard to make him get off his father. Basically, I've described that really poorly, but it basically this big public scene that ruins his reputation. Something then happens that suggests that maybe things are going on above his head, that maybe the world that he lives in isn't quite the world that he thought it was, and that in fact there are more things going on and there is something difficult and dangerous going on that he wasn't aware of. And you start to get these kind of suspicions, you start to see these conspiracies start to open up, and him and a person that he's in love with start to break away from this world. And I don't want to describe too much of it, but basically my honest review of this book is that it started off in a world where I was like, or started off at a pace where I was like, okay, this is fine. I'm trying to embed myself into the world, but if this is all this is going to be fine and nothing more. However, all of a sudden, about a third of the way through the book or halfway through the book, things switch up, things change, and it gets really, really good, and I was really, really impressed by it. It does feel a little bit mixed match. It does feel a little bit like it's not quite tight enough in terms of the story. There are moments that are kind of amazing and fast-paced and mind-blowing, and there are other bits that feel like he had to fill them in just to fill in a little bit of the plot or fill in some of the character, that sort of thing. Either way, I really, really enjoyed it. It was really enjoyable. As I said, it started off slowly, but it soon got into the pacing of things. The main characters are okay. They have a lot of personality. They do add to the story. They're not just characters that kind of serve as vessels through the story. They do actually have their own personalities, and you do end up liking more others than others, and there are villains, and there are good people, and there are medium people, and there are bad people, and there are people you dislike, all this sort of stuff. So that's good enough for me. So I would probably give this book maybe like a 4.25 out of 5 stars. It was enjoyable, maybe a 4.5 to give it a bit more, because it was enjoyable. It's not a 5-star read by any stretch of imagination, but it was very, very enjoyable. And that front cover kind of gives you an idea as to what happens in the book. So yeah, that's The Ferryman by Justin Cronin. That was the first book I read in August. Really enjoyed it. Okay, talking about books that I wasn't such a big fan of. All the Colours of the Dark by Chris Whitaker, which I'm so disappointed I'm saying, because I was such a big fan of We Begin at the End, and I was so excited to read this book. I was really excited to read it for like literally like a year and a half, however long, since I saw that it was a thing happening. And then I had to wait almost all year because it was my August readers pick of the month, so I ended up finishing it in August. So I had to wait like all that year to then not even enjoy it that much. The plot of the book is that there is somebody who is kidnapped as a result of trying to save somebody else from being kidnapped. He then goes, whilst being kidnapped, finds this person called Chloe, or experienced person Chloe, and becomes kind of obsessed with her, falls in love with her, eventually then goes off to try and find her in his future. Alongside this, the person that wasn't kidnapped because he was kidnapped instead is trying to find him, find out, thank him, whatever, all this sort of stuff. And that's basically what the whole book's about. There was nothing bigger, there was nothing grander, there was nothing emotional, there was nothing incredible about any of it. The writing is brilliant. Chris Whitaker's writing is fantastic. There is no doubting about that. That is a talent. 5 stars, all day long for that. But the rest of it was just kind of mediocre and kind of, I don't want to say boring because that's disrespectful, but it was just very, very kind of bland. If you had a scale of how things were going, and sometimes the plot's like this and like that, this just felt very much like it was on like an even keel the whole way through. Nothing was fast paced, mind blowing, and I felt a lot of it kind of just zoning out because I was like, I don't need to know a lot of this stuff. This is just a lot of kind of exposition, a lot of extra words that don't need to be here, and I was so underwhelmed by it. I get that there is a bigger story here. I think there is quite a powerful story. I do like a lot of the things and the ideas within the book. I just didn't find it that entertaining. That's probably the best way of describing my disappointment here. I just didn't find it that entertaining. I didn't come out of that thinking, wow, amazing, loved it. I just came out of it thinking, fine, okay. Characters are good, again, not brilliant. We Begin at the End had a fantastic character in it who I absolutely fell in love with. This one just didn't. There was nobody in this book where I thought, yeah, that's brilliant. I absolutely am so glad they're in here because they have made this book for me. Just didn't have that. Very mediocre characters, very mediocre kind of general entertainment value. So just big disappointment here. So I'd probably give this like a 3.75, maybe a 4-star, just because fantastic writing. I like the idea of it. There's probably a lot more here than I took in. I just didn't find it that entertaining. So that's All the Colours of the Dark by Chris Whitaker. Then for something that was a little bit lighter, and that is You Are Here by David Nicholls. Now, David Nicholls, I'm a big fan of. He likes to write these light romantic books. One Day was a heartbreaker for me. One Day, one of my favourite romance novels of all time, without a doubt. I've also read another of his books, which is really, really good, called Us, which is about kind of an older couple going through a divorce or a breakup, and then the older man or the man tries to help by going on a holiday, and it's their story. This is about two people, one in their late 30s, one in his early 40s, who go on a walking holiday. They don't go on a walking holiday together, they just end up on the same walking holiday together. It's like a group thing. Both been through slightly different lives. He has come out of a relationship. I think he was in a marriage where basically they couldn't have children, or he couldn't have children, and this other woman is now off with somebody else. And this other woman is just living a single life. She's not interested or that interested in having a relationship with a man. She's not that bothered. She just wants to be alone for a bit. They meet, they end up, you know, having a lovely time with one another. And then it's just the very, very simple difficulties of their age and whether they want to jump into something now. Neither of them were looking for anything, but they ended up just really, really enjoying each other's company. In typical David Nicholls fashion, the characters are fantastic, utterly enjoyable, really, really fun. You can't help but fall in love with how British the book is as well. It's literally a walking holiday set around, like, you know, British hills and walking boots and mud and forests and rivers and these very, very British things. I absolutely adored it. As well as that is funny, there is moments in this that are genuinely funny, and David Nicholls does have a very light way of writing. This is never too serious. Even the moments that were a little bit sad, you feel like it's more kind of rom-com sad, where you know it's going to be fine in the end, but it is a little bit sad that it's happening because you just want them to get together. It's like, come on, get together. And that's exactly what this book is about. And so it's a very fun, light-hearted, enjoyable read. So after a book that I didn't find that entertaining, that I find a bit of a slog in All the Colours of the Dark, it was brilliant to read You Are Here by David Nicholls. A nice, light reprieve break. So I'd give this one a 4.25 out of 5. It's not going to blow anybody's mind. It's not like One Day where you feel shattered for days afterwards. It is very simple. It is very nice. And yeah, that's You Are Here by David Nicholls. From something that was quite nice and cheery to something that was less cheery, which is James by Percival Everett. So if you don't know The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn, a book written in the 1800s, gone on to be a classic, basically a book about a chap called Huckleberry Finn who goes off on an adventure. He's then joined by a slave called Jim in that book, who is actually called James. James covers James's story. So they do go off and do adventures together, but there are times when they are separated, and this covers James's point of view in that. And it's very, very interesting because he gives you a completely different point of view from Jim. In the book Huckleberry Finn, or Adventures of Huckleberry Finn, he's seen as a slave, and there is not much more to that. There is obviously the questions around why he's a slave. Him and Huckleberry Finn end up having kind of like a nice relationship with one another, that sort of thing. This takes it a step further and takes it way past anything you read about James in The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn. As I said, they go off on an adventure together and they kind of interact with one another. Now, Huckleberry Finn is very young. James is a lot older as a slave. Huckleberry Finn doesn't quite understand why slaves are a thing. He doesn't understand why black people and white people are treated differently. And a lot of that is very pleasant to read in the book. There are some very unpleasant bits to read as well. Obviously, this being set in the 1800s, and this is basically when it was probably slavery was at its worst. White people treating black people as if they were completely different species of human being. It's disgusting, and that's all in here. So if you do find that sort of stories difficult, you will find this difficult. But generally, it's a pleasant book. It is a very rebellious book, and I don't want to spoil too much by saying that. It is very much a book about James, and it is very much about his journey and the differences he sees from the world than what we saw from Huckleberry Finn's views in The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn. It's fantastic. It's brilliant. It's not too long. I only finished it in a day and a half. It's incredibly well written. It's very, very powerful. And I thoroughly enjoyed it. And I don't know if it's going to feature on my books of the year at the end of the year, but it is a book that I would think about adding to the list because it was just so fantastic. It's very, very rare that I read a book that is less than 300 pages that I enjoy so much and leaves such a mark on me. The relationship between Huckleberry Finn and Jim was brilliant, and that is something that I always find fantastic as well. So yeah, you could not go wrong by reading James by Percival Everett, which is a fantastic read. I'd probably give this 4.5 out of 5 stars. The next book was The Wrong Sister by Claire Douglas. This was okay. The Wrong Sister by Claire Douglas focuses on Tasha and her sister Alice. One of them ends up going off on holiday. The other one is a rich sister who has a husband who's even richer, like incredibly wealthy. She goes off on the holiday. I can't remember which is which. Tasha isn't Tasha, goes off on the holiday and she pretends to be Alice on this holiday. She wears her clothes. It's Alice's place, by the way. I'm not describing this well. It's Alice's place in Venice. She goes off and she goes to this place and it's lovely. She's enjoying herself, but there's a couple of creepy episodes that happen while she's away. She gets a call one night that basically Alice and her husband were attacked at their home, Tasha's home, looking after their children, and the husband has died. So then basically the rest of the book is finding out who attacked them, why did they attack them. Along the same path, they have a long lost sister. And for so long, I thought it was going to be the long lost sister. And to give a bit of a spoiler, it's not the long lost sister that attacks them, though there are a lot of red herrings that suggest so. Did I like this book? I don't know. I didn't think it was amazing. It was a nice, fun, easy read. I enjoyed being in the world. I enjoyed Alice and Tasha. I liked their relationship. I liked their husband's relationship. I did feel quite embedded in the world, which is something that you've got to have in a thriller. I like books where it is down to earth. I'm just in England here, just doing like British stuff. Yes, I've never murdered anybody or even known anyone that's been anywhere near anything like that, but you know what I mean? I feel like I'm just reading about a British situation. I can understand everything they're talking about. There's no kind of imagination that I need to be using here to understand or picturing in my head. So that was enjoyable. That made it very easy. As I said, the story and the plot wasn't brilliant, and I kind of feel like it just petered off towards the end. There was not really a resolution that I was happy with personally. I felt this was a lot of Claire Douglas's books. There doesn't seem to be these big twists, plots, major mind-blowing moments. So that was a bit of a shame. But that's The Wrong Sister by Claire Douglas. I'd probably give this like a 4 out of 5 stars maybe. It was fine. It wasn't brilliant. It's not the best thriller I've ever read, but it was a nice, easy read. And it was a book that was recommended to me by a family member. So I picked it up because you know what? I thought, well, if they thought it was good, maybe I'll think it's good too. Thought it was fine, not brilliant. That's The Wrong Sister by Claire Douglas. That was the 5th book I read in the month and the penultimate book I read in the month as well. I've got one more to go. The final book was Sunrise on the Reaping by Suzanne Collins. Now, this is a prequel that focuses on Haymitch Abernathy, whatever his last name is. I've never been able to pronounce it or say it or listen to it properly. Either way, it's about Haymitch, who we all know from the original Hunger Games trilogy as the mentor of Katniss Everdeen. Haymitch, we know, won the Hunger Games, which is why he is a mentor for Katniss. We also know something must have happened that made him very, very drunk all the time and very, very, very unhappy and pessimistic about the world. This is the story that leads up to that. It's Haymitch's time in the Hunger Games. It's the journey of the people he meets along the way and what causes him to be such a unhappy person or an unhappy person. It's brilliant. It's so good. So the Ballads of Songbirds and Snakes, I just didn't roll with at all. I didn't find that very interesting at all. It just felt like it was trying to tell a prequel story of Coriolanus Snow, and who was President Snow, but then just didn't tell a very good one, and also just kind of twisted at the end. And it was almost like a, oh yeah, I need to remember this is a bad guy. You can't write a bad guy for the entire book. So she wrote a good guy for the entire book, and then it ended up just being a bad guy at the very end. I didn't enjoy that. I did enjoy this. Haymitch is kind of a good guy throughout the whole thing and is perceived to be a bad person. And it's just the story of why, as I said, he ends up being the incredibly pessimistic, negative drunk that he is in the trilogy. And I really enjoyed it. There's a lot more here that I was hoping for from the Ballads of Songbirds and Snakes. What I want in a prequel is to feel like I'm in the same world as the trilogy or the books that I am reading the prequel to. I want references to it. I want notes to it. I want to be able to go, oh my God, that thing is happening because of this thing. That happens in this. And I loved that throughout the whole book. The pacing's fantastic. A lot of the actual Hunger Games elements was probably the most interested I've been in the actual Hunger Games bits. Usually that's the bit I'm kind of like, yeah, well, they're in the Hunger Games. We know she's going to win or he's going to win, whatever. That was the bit I was most interested in and how that all kind of worked and the human interactions with each other. And the ending is sad. It wasn't like tear-jerking sad. I'm not going to say get your tissues out, but I will say the ending is sad and is very warranted as to why he then goes on to be the horrible, grumpy person that he is in the trilogy. And that is justified. And that is the way you write a prequel to a character that we all know the personality of, how you build up their personality in that way. So So this I was a huge fan of, such a big fan. I would probably give it a 4.5 out of 5 stars, which I usually leave for the genuinely fantastic books that I've read because it was so enjoyable. Did I enjoy it more because I've read the trilogy already? Yes. Or seen the trilogy? Yes, of course I did, because that's what you enjoy about a prequel. You're picking up the references from the book. But I would say you should probably read the trilogy before you read the prequel, which is very odd to say when you have a prequel, because the idea of a prequel is that it comes before them chronologically, but you need to have read the trilogy to get the fun references in this. And there's also the vast kind of literal final words of it were very much references to the Hunger Games trilogy. So yeah, there we go. That's Sunrise on the Reaping by Suzanne Collins, a huge fan of this. Haymitch is fantastic. The film is meant to be coming out soon as well, and it looks like they've absolutely nailed the casting for that. So that's got me even more excited to read this, because there's just a lot of things also in the book that I'm excited to see how they portray in the film. So we'll see how that goes. Sunrise on the Reaping by Suzanne Collins, 4.5 out of 5 stars. And that's the last book I read in August. So there are all the books I read in August. I think at some points in this video I may have said I've read some books in July. I'm so confused as to what month we're in. Either way, they're all the books I read in August. Let me know which of these books you've read. Let me know these books which you liked. Let me know down below if you disagree with the book review that I've given. I can think maybe possibly one. Either way, thank you for watching. If you're new here, hit subscribe. If you're old here, hit like. And until the next video, thank you for watching and goodbye.